Okay, Psychiana Lesson 4, ReverendCrystalCox, Goddess Church. You can donate to our church by bbgoddesschurch@gmail.com. Blah, 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 blah. Part 2, Lesson 4. Okay. In dealing with this immense subject of this world's creator and its creating marvel man and woman, I realized, of course, the utter impossibility of doing it the justice I should like to. I could probably write 10 years. We already read all that. You will at once... I should have just kept reading. But it is necessary now that I condense as much as possible and put the vital truth of this course of religious instruction into as few words as possible. You will at once recognize their dynamic power, however, and on applying the principles as I give them to you, you will find that they work. Well, I should hope so, right? So follow me closely, for it has... Why do you keep moving that? Follow me closely, for it has taken me a lifetime of study and thought to formulate and prove the facts that I am now writing down on a piece of paper for you to read. Keep in mind, I'm still learning to talk. I just come to this planet. Well, that's what it feels like. I was walking today with, my feet, I didn't. But also, I've had a tooth removed, and I feel like I'm relearning to talk. It may not sound like that. I feel like. So follow me closely. Okay. I'm not attempting to write these mighty facts in a scholarly manner at all, nor shall I introduce scientific terms. I'm writing for the man on the street, the man who needs them most. I want that fella to grasp what I'm talking about. Hence the use of highbrow, not to be confused with eyebrow. Highbrow terms will never be found in anything coming from my pen, no matter where it appears. The big businessman in his swell office probably has not the same need for these truths that you have. Probably. And as many of my students will be just ordinary, everyday fellows like I am, my wording and expression will be understood by them. In fact, this whole course of instruction is written so that even a child can understand it. That word even is a little passive-aggressive, don't you think? I have been asked many times to analyze the power and grip my writings exert. And I think my answer to that question and request has always been to the effect that the reason why these lessons grip is because they contain the truth of God, written so that anyone can comprehend them. And in passing once more, let me say to you that wherever and whenever you find a truth of God, you will instantly recognize it for sure. It says for such, and you will invariably find that such truth is so plain that a child can understand it. That's interesting, the word change there. I forgot my profound epiphany. But that's why when I play this back, I'll remember it. I don't know if I'll share it with you because it'll be long gone hence hither. Okay, I've always claimed that the creative God law behind the universe has been lost sight of on account of the simplicity of its operation. The greatest truths in life come from the mouths of little children, and the great underlying truths of God are unmistakably plain when the attention of the earnest seeker is directed into the proper channel. So in this entire course of lessons, please remember that I am writing them very plainly, and I'm giving you the very best that is in me. And as I pass these mighty truths along to you, I want you to rise to them and line up your life with the great fundamental God law. I want you to know for the first time in your life, perhaps, what true success, true health, and true happiness really are. And to me, they start with peace and contentment. And getting those, let's just leave it at that. And man will never know any of these things until the God law operates in their lives. When it does so operate, no heights are too great to be attained. In your own case, there is not much limit to what may be done. Remember this. These lessons, as you will shortly see, have come to me through the great source of all truth. Therefore, they cannot be wrong. They must and do contain the truth. Had they not contained the living, vital truth, both myself and Psychiana would never have found even public attention. As it is, this teaching will probably be one of the greatest forward religious movements the world has ever seen for a good many years. Now, in this fourth lesson, don't attempt to read or study it if you are liable to be disturbed. I am liable to be disturbed. I should like you to have at least 1 hour in which your time is absolutely your own. Oh, I see. Which no one's going to bother me. Nobody bother me, okay? Okay, Crystal. Okay. Get into a quiet, restful, and relaxed mood. Oh, smiling hurts. So, preparing your mind. Oh my God. Get into a quiet and restful and relaxed mood. I'm so relaxed I can't even read. And get into an expectant mood too. Oh my. This is me expecting. In other words, you're open to listening to what comes to you. For this lesson contains lots of spiritual power for those who can recognize it. In preparing your mind for the beginning of the understanding of the mighty dynamic God law, let me say to you here the idea of God, which I shall give you, will in all probability upset your previous ideas of who and what God, or this God law, actually is. Keep in mind that when my tone changes, there's a reason. Let it come to you. Feel this glowing God, this light, this vibration. In preparing your mind for the beginning of the understanding of the mighty dynamic God law, let me say to you here the idea that of God, which I shall give you, will in all probability upset your previous ideas of who and what God, or this God law, actually is. Indeed, of it being some distant power which might do something for you after you die, you will find a very present and self-existent power which can do something right here and right now. This is not about what happens to you in the afterlife. This is about learning this power right now, because it is always a now. Those who try and tell you that it's in the afterlife want you to keep believing that. They keep recycling you, because the afterlife never comes, because there's no fucking thing such as death. Right? So they trick you. Go to the light, go to the light. You come back, and you're always preparing for that afterlife, that heaven, so you're behaving yourself, right? Or going by their laws and their church and their all their stuff. But really, there is no death, so you come back. So it's about learning this God law right now, not being judged at a later date. Which, of course, is much better than having it in the future, obviously. You are sure of the life you're living now, and you are also sure that had you the many benefits and blessings of life, you could enjoy them. But you are not at all sure of the future. Not a single soul can prove that there is any future. Many trying to tell us of a home of bliss to be enjoyed after we die and in some future life, but it cannot be proven. It is only what they think. So shall we confine our operation of the God law to the here and now, letting the future take care of itself? I think that would be better. Don't you? Now, just a word of explanation as to your religious beliefs, which, by the way, I know nothing of. Probably most of my students have long since discarded the old orthodox idea of God, which is a very good thing. For if one were to try and get a definite explanation of who and what God really is from the many different sections of society claiming to know God, I'm afraid one would have a wonderful time doing it. For every preacher in the world, there is a different definition of God. There are over 3,000 different sects and denominations operating in our land today, and each is convinced that the rest of them are all wrong. And see, that's another way to take away your God power, which Jesus came here to show you to do. Have a whole bunch of religions, right? That isn't what Jesus came here to do. He was against religions, right? And he certainly wasn't a Christian, right? And he didn't have the Bible. All this stuff was written to control you. If you just focus on what it was that Jesus was teaching you to do, which is the God law. There's no one truth. There's no one road home. Okay, they're trying to convince you that they have the truth and no one else has it, unless you find their God in their own prescribed manner. You can't find him at all. In my mind, however, there is a mighty big question as to whether any of them have seen the light as it exists. You can form your own opinion, however, when these lessons are finished. You will then have a pretty good idea of who's right, the differing religion organizations or I. Well, then. It's pretty hard to reconcile the differing conceptions of God with the truth as it exists, and sometimes I wonder how it could have possibly been that religious idolatry has taken the place of the dynamic God law. They teach you not to have false gods and false idling, but they created them, right? Because you are God. You are a creator God. And the God law, you can use at any time. But first you must convince every cell in your body that that's true. Okay, however, no matter what your religious persuasion is, remember you have agreed to lay it to one side for the time being. Running through all the systems of religious instruction the world has ever seen, there is like a silver thread, the truth. The system may be 99% error, and it probably is. But there is some truth in every system of religion, no matter where it originated and who originated it. The world has been to date many crucified saviors, long before the Christian Savior appeared. There had been many others, and their followers, of course, all considered their own Savior the only one who was really a combination of God and man. I won't spend any time discussing all these other saviors at this point, any more than to say that they were all supposed to be a mysterious combination of God with some man. They were all supposed to have done miraculous things. Most of them were crucified. They all rose from the dead. And they all came into the world to save people from their sins. Blah, blah, blah. No such thing as sin. And creating the reality. And they don't. Blah, 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 blah. And so, decipher what I mean when I say, like that. There have been enough divine saviors down through history to save a dozen worlds, including this one. That is, of course, if their claims were true. Unfortunately, however, their claims were not true, as history also shows. The point I want to make, get to the point, why don't you just say the point in the first place, is that man who was considered to be God, and a man in combination, was usually a very bright thinker. See, this is why I listen to this stuff and I take notes and then I write my own stuff. I mean, it's good stuff, it's just that some of it's a little bit, Alrighty now, are you done? Are you done? Going to continue? Okay. Some of the most brilliant and elevated of sayings came from the mouth of Confucius. Confucius say, in the case of Christian religion, its prophet, one Jesus, was no more than a man. If I had the time, I could convince you this statement is a fact, and I could convince you beyond any shadow of a doubt. But at the same time, that man Jesus knew what spiritual law was, and to a wonderful degree. He had a grasp on the truths of the God law that very few have ever had, either before or since that time. So I'm going to take that man and use him, because you are probably more familiar with that story than you are with the story of any of the other world's crucified saviors. And in dealing with this man, I shall show you the staggering importance of the truths he saw and used. And mighty truths they are, too. It is interesting here to note that never did Jesus Christ say he was God. And at no time did he ever make such a claim. To the contrary, he claimed to be the opposite. Did he not say that the things he did, you and I should also do? Did he not say that? Did he not ask why anyone should call him God? Many times he said that. He specifically claimed not to be God, to the exclusion of the rest of the human race. The church is the organization which tacked divinity onto Christ, and by so doing, they absolutely killed his message. Had the church left him as a man, as he claimed to be, and not tacked him into the nonsensical resurrection from the dead, and the equally nonsensical and unprovable ascension into a place called heaven, what a difference it would have made, right? Yeah, if you're like, study the teachings of Jesus. Jesus was a master healer. Jesus was, all the things Jesus was. And you just study that and be that. But because they made him supernatural, you could never be that. He died only for you, and he's the Son of God, and he's the only... And so they made it so godlike, when that isn't what Jesus came here to show and to teach, that you, who you are and who you can be. And all times at once. So Jesus is here right now on one timeline. Okay, but by introducing a story that he was God, and therefore possessing a power which no one else possesses, they just simply took him away out of the reach of the common folks like you and me, and placed him on a pedestal where he never belonged. And further than that, they robbed mankind of every chance of ever doing the things that he did. If Christ were God, then there can be no possible chance of you or I duplicating these words. If they made him a God, and they put their statues up of them killing him, and people worship those, which is odd, right? Then they don't have millions of people revolting and becoming just like Jesus and changing their reality. See, if he were but a man, however, in full tune with the God law, which I claim, then there is a very chance of every man using the same God law as he did to whatever is needed in life. And what a different light this throws on things, does it not? Just think for a moment. Suppose there was existing now a great spiritual law more than sufficient to make possible every proper desire of the human heart. Ooh, a proper desire. I wonder what that is. Excluding. Wouldn't that be very welcome power? Well, friend, that is the message of the Christ. That is the message he came to bring. That and nothing more. His message was totally one telling of the power of the God law. His message was completely limited to the telling of the actual, literal, physical, and spiritual results to be obtained through the application of this mighty God law. And he proved that he knew how to call into play this same law that I'm telling you of. Diseases disappeared, the blind received their sight, the deaf could hear, the lame could walk, the hungry were fed. And this is the stories they couldn't change because it was handed down families or whatever. And so if you can master quantum law, God law, you can just shift any person to a reality where, say, if they had a broken leg, then they don't have a broken leg. Or if you know, the loaves of bread thing, you can shift realities and you can invoke God law. So, and it is my contention that this same power exists today, and for that very purpose. True, it is the religiously inclined will laugh at that. They tell us that we cannot know the spiritual God law until we die. Right? So you have to wait till the end to see the results of the test. Oh, sorry, there's no end, you're going back in. Over and over and over. In many ways, we're being liberated from that by the Galactic Council of Light, the whole recycle of it. But humans have got a long ways away from realizing their power. And that's why the Galactic Council of Light had to come in and help. And so us learning to master our emotions and to embrace the God law and how to use it is it's interesting to me, and it's kind of the only thing to know, right? Because that's how you shift your realities. Okay, they tell us we cannot know the spiritual God law until we die. They cannot tell me that, though, for I know better. And before you've gone very far on your way with me, you will know better too. But just suppose that I do know what I'm talking about. Just suppose that there is such a power as that, easily available here and now. Do you think such a power would make any difference in your life? I think it would. Do you think it would? And take it from me, whoever you are, that is the fact of life as it exists today. That was the truth Jesus proclaimed, and for which we are told they killed him. Never did he take any credit to himself. It was ever first, last, and all the time God. And that is the way it is with Psychiana today. First, last, and all, God. To us, however, God is a spiritual law. And in my writings of my religious doctrine of my church, I talk a lot about that. And also I call it a quantum spiritual law. it's a law of physics. It's a law of nature. The God law is, and you have access to it. You just have to know that. But for me, it's about getting rid of traumas and triggers and stressors and things that want to get my attention every day, that want to make me feel bad. Because we learned that like in our first 15 years or first 12 years as our operating system. Okay, it operates here and now and is the greatest operating law or power. God law, spiritual law. This world is ever... I'm going to do that again. This is cool. Okay, so first, last, and all, it is about God to us too. However, God is a spiritual law. It operates here and now and is the greatest operating law or power this world has ever known or seen. And it hasn't known much about this power to date either. It's learning though, and as this teaching of mine and its accompanying power continues to go around the world, so will men and women begin to learn something about this self-existent, present, immutable, dynamic God law, and knowing the operation of that law. Their every want will be supplied, and their every right desire will be fulfilled, by and through the operations and existence of this mighty God law, which is God. So shall we look for a little while now at what Jesus said about this mighty God law. I shall ask you to go back to the story of the woman of Samaria at the well of Jacob. You will remember that this carpenter man had asked her for a drink of water. In this conversation which followed, he made a positive and definite assertion that God is spirit. He did not say God is a spirit. He said God is spirit. A search of the oldest text here will disclose the fact that the article a is not in there at all. So it did not say a spirit. It was interpolated or added to make sense out of the statement according to the ideas of the translators of this chapter. Instead of making sense out of the statement, however, they made a complete nonsense and destroyed the entire meaning of the verse. More than that, they destroyed the definition of God as Jesus gave it. God is spirit. As a matter of fact, no one can tell the harm these translators did through their translations of their own ideas as to just how these scriptures should read. While passing, it might be as well to call attention to the fact that there has never been known to exist one single original manuscript covering this Bible story. The fact is not published by the church folk, and many of them may question this statement, but it is a fact. Not one single original manuscript covering this Bible story is ever known to existence. Even the authorship of the four Gospels is absolutely unknown. It is known that at least 3 of them were not written by the men whose title they bear, and in fact further know that no one knows who actually did write them, if they were not written by the church itself. All that has ever existed on the New Testament are copies and copies of copies. But original manuscripts there are none, nor have there ever been in any known existence. In fact, in view of this fact, I am of the opinion that too much dogma concerning the divinity of the scriptures is certainly quite out of order. This story may be taken on faith, but there certainly is no evidence of its truth as far as authentic proof of the existence of any original manuscripts goes. I shall not enlarge upon this subject here, though, as my magazine Psychiana Quarterly goes into this phase very fully. Let me say a word or two of the warring church factions. If you were to understand that the men who translated this Bible were ordinary, everyday men, he's human beings like you and me, and if you would only understand that they were only educated up to the light of their time, then it seems to me that you would not care what interpretation were placed on the story or the creation of man, provided, of course, that this interpretation were reasonable. We know, and we know full well, that the mighty creative intelligence behind this universe did not make a man from a mixture of spit and earth. We know that, and all the religiously inclined could not make us believe that. We also know that no God caused a deep sleep to come upon a man, and then while fast asleep removed one rib and made a woman out of it. We know that did not happen. But what difference does it make whether man's creation took 1 second of time or 10 million years? What difference does it make whether man began his existence as a humble amoeba progressing through millions of ages until his present stage was reached, or whether he was instantly made in a second of time? That is not what matters, my friend. What actually matters is this. What message have you from your God to the man on the street here and now? If you and your brethren cannot agree as to whether the story you depend on is true or not, then how do you expect to convince the man on the street that it's true? If you continue to war and fight between yourselves as to whether or not Jesus Christ was God, and if you cannot agree on this subject, what light is the man on the corner going to get from you? How is he going to know? You may depend upon one thing, though, and that thing is that the men who deciphered these old anonymous manuscripts you call the Word of God were 100% human. And you may, I don't know for sure about that one, but, and you may depend upon another thing also. You may depend upon it that the men who wrote them were subject to human limitations. So if I were you, I believe I should quit squabbling among yourselves and try and get down to the basic fundamental facts concerning the living God as he exists and operates here and now. Okay. Men and women who make no profession of religion at all. Yes, she says, I've digressed a little bit. You think? And I'm probably running out of time, so I'm going to skip down here a little bit. Okay, Webster said that spirit was life or intelligence conceived of, or capable of existence of being without physical form. Here we are getting down to some definite about God. We have a definite definition of terms. We're not accepting that someone else told us. Neither are we accepting some theory or other. We are getting down to the bedrock, as it were. We have then the statement that God is life, or intelligence, capable of existence without bodily or physical form. And that is the very best definition possible. That definition is corroborated throughout the entire scriptures. So for the purpose here, I shall take it as it stands. There are, of course, many other things that God is. Before he could have been any of these things, he must need have been life first. I wish I could drive that statement home to you. Let me repeat that again. Before God could have been any of the other things that he is, he must needs have been life first. Had he not been life, he could never have been anything else. So for a while here, I shall concentrate on the accepted fact that God is spirit, and that spirit is life, capable of existence without physical form. In other words, God is invisible life. It will take you a long time to fully grasp that statement, my friend. You will not grasp it overnight, but when you do grasp it to the full, you will begin to understand a little bit just what God really is, and more than that, just where he is. Try and imagine this living God, the most dynamic power in the universe, being all around you in the air, so to speak, in the room in which you're reading this, but indiscernible to you in your present state of consciousness. That is the exact fact of the presence of God. He is not hidden away in the sky somewhere, nor does he hide and operate from some remote portion of your brain through your subconscious mind either. Nor are his manifestations made known through the medium or your sympathetic nerve system, or anything on that order. Never believe such dawdle as this living dynamic power, this mighty God. Okay, so saying basically believe this living